So many great highlights from our first season together. It's almost impossible to pick. Obviously, there were a number of really fantastic soloists. We opened our season with a performance with Renee Fleming. Hard to get better than that. 3 months after that, in December, we were able to welcome Yo-Yo Ma, the great cellist. For a kid like me that grew up in the 80s, I will be very honest and say one of my other highlights was being able to conduct Star Wars with the orchestra. That's an awful lot of fun for an 80s kid like me. But I think that the real highlight, the big highlight, the overall highlight was to work week in and week out with all of the members of the Colorado Symphony. You know, this was our first full season together, and it was really the first opportunity that we had an extended chance to really get to know each other. And there's something about being able to work week in, week out with the same group of extraordinarily talented musicians that for me, that's the real highlight. Performing at Red Rocks is really one of the highlights, not just of my first season with the Colorado Symphony, but it's one of the highlights of my entire career. I was thinking when we were there, you know, we performed on that program music of Leonard Bernstein and Rachmaninoff and Tchaikovsky, and all of these composers have been gone for some time. Mr. Bernstein passed on about 30 years ago, and of course Rachmaninoff and Tchaikovsky are decades and decades in the past. But I was thinking there at Red Rocks that all of a sudden when you perform in a venue that is literally 300 million years old, all of a sudden these people that were in the 20th century or even the 19th century, these people whose music that we perform, sometimes they can feel very distant to us. And yet, when you put it in the perspective of being in a venue that's literally 300 million years old, somehow it actually helps you feel closer to these composers. And for me, that was actually, in addition to, of course, just the stunningly beautiful setting, that was the real takeaway for me from Red Rocks. During our first year here in Denver, we actually lived right downtown, which was very convenient. And that afforded us the opportunity to experience a lot of the different restaurants that downtown has to offer, a lot of great cultural events, whether it's going to the art museum or the Clifford Still or the ballet or the opera. There's so many really wonderful arts organizations here in town that we've really loved being able to patronize as well. One of the great opportunities that I've had over this past season has been getting out and about into the community, which is something that I really enjoy, because when I do speaking engagements, it's really important to me that the audience not feel talked at, but that they feel that they're being able to have a conversation. So I'll always arrive early at events like that. I'll always stay late so that I can make sure to have as many of these kind of one-on-one interactions as possible, because for me, at the end of the day, while we're entertaining 2,000 people at once in Betcher Concert Hall, what I'm really trying to do is to create and establish these one-on-one connections. And so whether that's done through personal relationships that we have, or whether it's done through speaking engagements, for me, at the end of the day, it always comes down to how do I make that personal connection? One of the things that I love the most about what we do, about presenting orchestral music, is if you're having the greatest day of your life, a composer has also had that kind of day and has composed it. If you're having the worst day of your life, a composer has also had that kind of day and has composed that. And there's something about experiencing what we do in the concert hall with other people, and most often a composer from 1 or 2 or even 300 years ago, and knowing that the people that are in the room with you and the person or people that created the works of art that we're listening to, that we're experiencing, it helps us all feel not alone, knowing that there were composers that felt exactly the same kind of thing that you're feeling today. That there might be people here in this concert hall today that are having the exact same kind of day that you are. So is there a void in the community that we at the orchestra can fill? Absolutely there is, and that void is this disconnect that we're feeling from each other. When you come into the concert hall, it's you and 2,000 of your friends, and everybody turns off their cell phones, has an opportunity to disconnect from the outside world and connect more with your own inside world. That's the void I think we fill. I think that there is a perception, unfortunately, that classical music and orchestral music are somehow very kind of highbrow and very elitist, and all it takes is reading one or two composer biographies to understand that this is not intended to be highbrow music. This is not intended to be elitist music. This is music for everybody. And the challenge for me, the challenge for us at the Colorado Symphony, is to make sure that we're conveying that message to our audience, both the audience that's already with us in the concert hall and the potential audience, the audience that has heard about us, the audience that has considered coming and visiting us, but that maybe hasn't done that yet. My challenge is to make what we do as relatable to everyone in our community as possible. Putting together these concerts that we perform, putting all of these various pieces together, how do you put together a program? This is the question that is, for me, the most exciting part of what I do. I was having a great conversation with a mentor maybe 10 or 15 years ago, talking about programming. And he said to me, if you think you've got a good program put together with these 3 pieces, let's say, ask yourself the following question. If these 3 pieces all sidled up next to each other at a bar, what would they have to talk about? And I love that question, because if the 3 pieces on the program don't have anything to do with each other, then it's very difficult for them to have a conversation. If the 3 pieces have too much to do with each other, then it can also be very difficult to have a conversation. So you need to put together pieces that have something to do with each other, that really create a narrative. What I'm trying to do when I'm programming concerts is to create a narrative for the audience. So it's not just about the first note of the first piece to the last note of the first piece. The journey I'm trying to create is, how have we changed? How have we evolved? How have we grown since we listened to the first note of the first piece all the way until the last note of the last piece? Trying to put together these kinds of narrative programs. I mean, listen, it's very easy in 2018, 2019 to just turn on Spotify or iTunes or whatever your music program is of choice, and you can listen to virtually any and all of the pieces that we play at the Colorado Symphony. So if that's the case, why would people come hear us? And it's because of this journey that we're trying to create. I think also it's really important that over the course of an individual program, yes, but especially over the course of a season, that we have presented for our audience a varied diet of works. I think a season that is too heavy on anything is not good. If it's too heavy on the classical repertoire, well, then you're doing it at the expense of other periods. Same with the Romantic repertoire, same with 20th century repertoire. So what we're really trying to do is we're trying to create these narrative structures within also a varied diet, so that there really does become something for everyone. Now that the Colorado Symphony and I have a full season together under our belts, and now that the audience also has a full season together with us, whether in Betcher or in Red Rocks or Arvado or Fiddler's Green, now that we've had the opportunity to build this relationship, now comes the fun. Now we get to build on top of what we've already established. So many great, exciting things coming up at the Colorado Symphony, and I couldn't be more excited for season 2 and 3 and 4 and beyond.